Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session in the Bringing Digital Learning into the History Classroom. We're just doing a quick follow-up from our session last week with history presented by Thomas and Jonathan Ketchell. We had a great session last week. There was a couple of questions that were still existing and lingering around after our work session last week. So I'm going to walk you through some of those questions and hopefully I can address it. If any other questions come up, please feel free to post it into the classroom. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a screen share into my history. There we go, my history website. Now, with some of the questions that came up with the history website, there were some questions about how to move your different elements around. So if you look on your different elements that you've created, you'll see that on the side you'll have where is it? Oh, there it is, a little navigation tool. So this tool right here will allow you to move it. So if you watch the different colored dots, as I drag, so I'm going to click on it, I'm going to drag. As I move it above or below, it'll change the location of the object on the timeline. So feel free, you can move questions around. Just keep an eye on where that dot is going. So as I continue to move it up, and I want to see the other locations at the same time, really what you're going to do, it lets you manipulate it in any direction that you'd like. So now that I can see it, I can put it in between these two items and you'll see that it changed the structure and the format. One of the other questions that came up after last week's session was how to add audio to your timeline. So we know when we get to our last event, there's the plus sign. You click on the plus and then you click on add audio. Now with the audio, bring you up at the bottom here. For add an audio file, it says upload from your computer or upload directly from the internet. So with the internet, it's a little bit easier because you know you're just going to click on a link. But the question was, what tools or applications do we have inside our MacBooks to help us upload, record the audio and then upload it from the computer? So what you're going to be doing is you're actually going to use your GarageBand. So my computer does not have GarageBand because mine is does not have all of the bonuses that the teacher computers have. But there is a link in the announcement section in Google Classroom, and it walks you through step by step how to go and upload your GarageBand files as an MP3 file. Now, very important, I did try playing with QuickTime. Some of you might be familiar with the logo, and I'll show you. With the logo for QuickTime. I tried playing with QuickTime, but unfortunately it uploads and saves as an MP4, which won't be processed and housed by the history timeline. So what you want to do is go into your GarageBand, and then you're going to save, and it'll walk you through, this document will walk you through step by step how to save it as an MP3. Once it's saved as an MP3 file on your computer, I like to keep it on my desktop just so I can easily find it. Then what you're going to do is upload from your computer, and you'll be able to select the documents that are MP3. So here's a previous document that's an MP4, and you'll see when I try to upload that, it'll say it can only upload MP3 audio files. So GarageBand, use that document. It'll help you step by step. But from GarageBand, just like any recording application, you're just going to press the red button. It says record whatever clip you want, and then it'll save. Okay, so that's really how you can do it from your computer. Think about a creative way to have your students do that. You can have your students record something on your computer, and then you can upload it onto the onto a timeline. Okay. Another question that came up was, how can you share this work that we've been doing with these timelines with others, whether it be other teachers, whether it be other classmates? Last week, part of our assignment was to actually create a timeline. So this was a timeline I just kind of threw together here. So here, I'm going to go to View Timeline. Okay. Let's see if there's any other adjustments. So here, since I didn't upload an audio file, I'm just going to delete that. Yes, I'm sure. Okay. Now I can view my timeline and refresh. Let's see if it wants to go ahead and do that for me. There we go. It always takes a minute. So when you refresh your timeline, you can share your timeline by the link. Okay, so when you think about what we did last week we were on our timeline and we actually shared our links. This allowed And this allowed your colleagues to be able to view your timelines, which is actually your activity for today. So I figured it will give us ourselves an opportunity to browse what the work that our colleagues did and really get some ideas about how you could use these timelines within your own classroom. So you could drop the link. Think about also Padlet. We do a lot of work with Padlet in our sessions. Now, and we can show you last week's session, we had some great comments describing what Padlet, how you could use the history website in your classroom and a sentence to describe it. So with this Padlet, we had your colleagues post different ideas. Think about having this a Padlet for your class. You could have your students post the link and the title of the timeline right into this Padlet. So it's a quick way to share the Padlet, have everyone's on one location. It's a little bit easier than emailing directly to share with your colleagues or with your classmates. This way, there can be a whole collection. So if you look at our shared Google Doc, here we have the links for everyone's documents here. And today, what you're actually going to do for your follow-up activity is to take some time and to browse some of your colleagues' work. So looking at colleague work and share the title of the timeline. What did you enjoy about it? When you're talking about what you enjoyed about the timeline, think about whether it's the design of it, the features, the questions that they used. Think about what questions do you have about the timeline? Do you really wonder how they, where they found some amazing images? If you wonder, did they thought about phrasing the question differently or using a different add-on to the timeline? And then finally, any recommendations? What else would you love to see in that timeline? Whether they could use some audio clips, and if you have a website you would recommend, whether it's something from DPLA that we've run into or the Library of Congress. Thinking about the different resources that we've used and that we've learned about in this session and what you would recommend or any next steps. So if this was step one, in creating this, what would be the next timeline that you would recommend them to create? So keep that in mind as well. Really just giving us an opportunity to just browse and explore each other's work. We don't get to do that often enough, so this activity is going to allow you to do that. So those were really all the questions that came up during the follow-up session, during the history session. So I decided to take the time to address them now. If you have any questions while you're working through this, and I'll stop sharing my screen now. If you have any questions while you're working through today's brief session, feel free to drop them into the classroom. Okay, I will be available in the classroom. Really looking forward to address any questions that come up. If you want to add more to your timelines, please feel free to do so. We really want to make sure that these tools are something that you can take advantage of and use within your classroom. So last week's session gave you time to explore by yourself and with some colleagues and see what they were doing. And this week really gives you some time to reflect and say, how could I use this with my students? Now, I really liked how this teacher presented something in a different structure, a different format. So keeping that in mind. Our digital learning series is really just allowing you to explore some new resources, some new tools, become familiar with them, and then actually go into the classroom and implement them. If you have any other questions as you are working today, please feel free to put them in the classroom, but just a brief session to give you some time to stop and reflect. I hope you have a great afternoon and enjoy the timelines that your colleagues created.